Novak Djokovic is back in training for the Australian Open after winning a legal challenge to remain in the country. The #1 ranked men's tennis player was refused entry to Australia over questions about a COVID vaccine exemption. But after Djokovic challenged the ruling in court, a judge granted him entry on Monday. However, it's still unclear whether the tennis star will be allowed to participate in the Australian Open. The government said it was still considering another way to deport him. For more, I want to bring in Brendan Crew. He's a reporter for Network 10 in Australia. Thank you for joining us. Djokovic posted a picture on his Instagram last week saying, quote, "I'm heading down under with an exemption permission." Can you please explain to us whatever happened to that medical exemption?
Well, good morning from Melbourne, Lilia. What we do know is that Novak Djokovic tested positive to coronavirus on December 16. We know that from his lawyer's submissions. We also know that he was granted a medical exemption from Tennis Australia, but when he came to Australia, Border Force officers rejected that medical exemption under the ruling that having COVID-19 in the previous 6 months is not a valid excuse to not get the vaccine. So they cancelled his visa. Of course, he challenged that cancellation and he won. But it's important to note that he didn't win because the judge found he had a valid medical exemption. He won under a technicality that Border Force officers didn't give him enough time to consider his options.
I see. So what we know of Djokovic at this point, he is absolutely chasing history with a chance to win a record 21st Grand Slam title if he's allowed to play, of course. He's also a 9-time Australian Open champion. What's the political cost for the Australian government to fight Djokovic's visa status once again?
Well, it's a pretty messy situation all around. I mean, if they do deport him, if they do make him leave Australia, there will be international backlash on a global scale. There'll also be backlash here in Australia from his supporters and from people who think he's been treated unfairly. But if they don't deport him, if they let him play here in the Australian Open, our Prime Minister Scott Morrison has been on the record saying that rules are rules and has a very tough stance on borders. So it'll appear weak on those so-called tough borders here in Australia. A very bad look and just messy all around, no matter what the government does.
Yeah, no politician wants to be accused of flip-flopping and also of giving preferential treatment to somebody at Djokovic's level. Now, Australia's immigration minister is saying that he's still considering deporting the tennis superstar. Could that happen? I mean, what would happen next?
Yeah, that's the last we've heard is the immigration minister is highly considering using his powers to deport Djokovic no matter what. I mean, if that does happen, Djokovic can appeal that decision again, which means it goes back before the court for a second time. Whether Djokovic can stay in Australia while that court proceedings is ongoing is a matter for another judge. But whether Djokovic can stay in Australia at the moment, he can, and he can compete here at the Australian Open. He's been here practicing at Rod Laver Arena, and the whole world will be watching if he does play.
Well, I mean, I'd like to say they're ping-ponging, but clearly it's tennis. So thank you, Brendan. We appreciate your reporting.
Thanks, Lilia.